we'll be listening to Peter Pan where we left off.
He came back, and there was a greedy look in his eyes, which ought to have alarmed her, but did not.
"Oh, the stories I could tell to the boys," she cried, and then Peter gripped her and began to draw her toward the window.
"Let me go," she ordered him. "Wendy, do come with me and tell the other boys." Of course, she was very pleased to be asked, but she said, "Oh dear, I can't. Think of Mummy. Besides, I can't fly. I'll teach you. Oh, how lovely to fly. I'll teach you how to jump on the wind's back, and then away we go." "Oh," she exclaimed rapturously.
Wendy, when you are sleeping in your silly bed, you might be flying about with me saying funny things to the stars."
"Oh." And Wendy, there are mermaids. Mermaids with tails, such long tails. "Oh," cried Wendy, "to see a mermaid." He had become frightfully cunning. "Wendy," he said, "how we should all respect you." She was wriggling her body in distress. It was quite as if she were trying to remain on the nursery floor. But he had no pity for her. "Wendy," he said, the sly one, "you could tuck us in at night." "Oh, none of us has ever been tucked in at night." "Oh," and her arms went out to him. "And you could darn our clothes and make pockets for us." "None of us has any pockets." How could she resist? "Of course, it's awfully fascinating," she cried. "Peter, would you teach John and Michael to fly too?" "If you like," he said indifferently, and she ran to John and Michael and shook them. "Wake up," she cried. "Peter Pan has come, and he is to teach us to fly." John rubbed his eyes. "Then I shall get up," he said. "I say, Peter, can you really fly?" Instead of troubling to answer him, Peter flew around the room, taking the mantelpiece on the way. "How topping," said John and Michael. "How sweet," cried Wendy. "Yes, I'm sweet. Oh, I am sweet," said Peter, forgetting his manners again. It looked delightfully easy, and they tried it first from the floor and then from the beds. But they always went down instead of up. "I say, how do you do it?" asked John. "You just think lovely, wonderful thoughts," Peter explained, "and they lift you up in the air." Of course, Peter was trifling with them, for no one can fly unless the fairy dust has been blown on him. Fortunately, as we have mentioned, one of his hands was messy with it, and he blew some on each of them with the most superb results. "Now just wiggle your shoulders this way," he said, "and let go." They were all on their beds, and gallant Michael let go first. He did not quite mean to let go, but he did it, and immediately he was borne across the room. "I flewed," he screamed while still in midair. John let go and met Wendy near the bathroom. "Oh, lovely. Oh, ripping. Look at me, look at me, look at me." Up and down they went, and round and round. Heavenly was Wendy's word. "I say," cried John, "why shouldn't we all go out?" Of course, it was to this that Peter had been luring them. Michael was ready. He wanted to see how long it took him to do 1,000,000,000 miles, but Wendy hesitated. "Mermaids," said Peter again. "Oh, and there are pirates." "Pirates?" cried John, seizing his Sunday hat. "Let us go at once. Second to the right, and straight on till morning." That, Peter had told Wendy, was the way to the Neverland. But even birds, carrying maps and consulting them at windy corners, could not have sighted it with these instructions. Peter, you see, just said anything that came into his head. At first, his companions trusted him implicitly, and so great were the delights of flying that they wasted time circling round church spires or any other tall objects on the way that took their fancy. John and Michael raced, Michael getting a start. They recalled with contempt that not so long ago they had thought themselves fine fellows for being able to fly round a room. Not long ago. But how long ago? They were flying over the sea before this thought began to disturb Wendy seriously. John thought it was their second sea and their third night. Sometimes it was dark, and sometimes light, and now they were very cold, and again too warm. Did they really feel hungry at times, or were they merely pretending because Peter had such a jolly new way of feeding them? His way was to pursue birds who had food in their mouths suitable for humans, and snatch it from them. Then the birds would follow and snatch it back, and they would all go chasing each other gaily for miles, parting at last with mutual expressions of goodwill. But Wendy noticed with gentle concern that Peter did not seem to know that this was rather an odd way of getting your bread and butter, nor even that there are other ways. When playing Follow My Leader, Peter would fly close to the water and touch each shark's tail in passing. Just as in the street, you may run your finger along an iron railing. They could not follow him in this with much success, so perhaps it was rather like showing off, especially as he kept looking behind to see how many tails they missed. You must be nice to him, Wendy impressed on her brothers. What could we do if he were to leave us? We could go back, Michael said. How could we ever find our way back without him? Well, then we could go on, said John. That is the awful thing, John. We should have to go on, for we don't know how to stop.
This was true. Peter had forgotten to show them stop.
And so, with occasional worries, but on the whole rollicking, they drew near the Neverland. They had been going pretty straight all the time, not perhaps so much owing to the guidance of Peter or Tink, because the island was looking for them. It is only thus that anyone may sight those magic shores. There it is, said Peter calmly. Where? Where all the arrows are pointing. Indeed, 1,000,000 golden arrows were pointing it out to the children, all directed by their friend the sun, who wanted them to be sure of their way before leaving them for the night. Wendy and John and Michael stood on tiptoe in the air to get their first sight of the island. Strange to say, they all recognized it at once, and until fear fell upon them, they hailed it, not as something long dreamt of and seen at last, but as a familiar friend to whom they were returning home for the holidays. They had been flying apart, but they huddled close to Peter now. They were now over the fearsome island, flying so low that sometimes a tree grazed their feet. Nothing horrid was visible in the air, yet their progress had become slow and laboured, exactly as if they were pushing their way through hostile forces. Sometimes they hung in the air until Peter had beaten on it with his fists. Feeling that Peter was on his way back, the Neverland had again woke into life. In his absence, things are usually quiet on the island. The fairies take an hour longer in the morning, the beasts attend to their young, the redskins feed heavily for 6 days and nights, and when pirates and lost boys meet, they merely bite their thumbs at each other. But with the coming of Peter, who hates lethargy, they are underway again. If you put your ear to the ground now, you would hear the whole island seething with life. On this evening, the chief forces of the island were disposed as follows. The lost boys were out looking for Peter. The pirates were out looking for the lost boys. The redskins were out looking for the pirates. And the beasts were out looking for the redskins. They were going round and round the island, but they did not meet because all were going at the same rate. When they have all passed, comes the last figure of all, a gigantic crocodile. We shall see for whom she is looking presently. The crocodile passes, but soon the boys appear again, for the procession must continue indefinitely until one of the parties stops or changes its pace. Then quickly they will be on top of each other. All are keeping a sharp lookout in front, but none suspects that the danger may be creeping up from behind. This shows how real the island was. The first to fall out of the moving circle was the boys. They flung themselves down on the ground close to their underground home. I do wish Peter would come back, every one of them said nervously. Though in height and still more in breadth, they were all larger than their captain. While they talked, they heard a distant sound. You and I, not being wild things of the woods, would have heard nothing. But they heard it, and it was the grim song. Yo-ho, yo-ho, the pirate life, the flag of skull and bones, a merry hour, a hempen rope and hay for Davy Jones. At once, the lost boys. But where are they? They are no longer there. Rabbits could not have disappeared more quickly. I will tell you where they are. They are already in their home under the ground, a very delightful residence of which we shall see a good deal presently. As the pirates advanced, the quick eye of Starkey sighted the last of the lost boys disappearing through the wood, and at once his pistol flashed out, but an iron claw gripped his shoulder. "Captain, let go," he said, writhing. Now, for the first time, we hear the voice of Hook. It was a black voice. "Put back that pistol first," it said, threateningly. "It was one of those boys you hate. I could have shot him dead. Shall I after him, Captain?" asked pathetic Smee. "Not now, Smee," Hook said darkly.
"He is only one, and I want to mischief all the 7.
"Scatter and look for them. Most of all," Hook said passionately, "I want their Captain Peter Pan. 'Twas he cut off my arm." He brandished the hook threateningly. "I've waited long to shake his hand with this. Oh, I'll tear him." "And yet," said Smee, his first mate, "I have often heard you say that Hook was worth a score of hands for combing the hair and other homely uses." "Aye," the captain.
Okay, I'll have to finish it.
"I was a mother,